Tenderize that Philly meat real good.
Tenderize that Philly meat real good.
Tenderize that Philly meat real good.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie Tee, here on behalf of the NFC East Super Friends, bringing you around the NFC East in week number 13 in the National Football League. Give me about 10 or 15 minutes of your time. I don't need much more than that to give you what you need. All right, so half of the stink of the NFC East was on a bye week. And New York Giants, they'll return to action in week 14 on Monday Night Football, hosting the Green Bay Packers on a Monday night doubleheader. You know, Titans, Dolphins will also be on Monday night. They'll be happening at the same time, so it'll be a unique Monday Night Football experience. The Giants will be a part of that as they'll be hosting the Green Bay Packers fresh off their bye. Meanwhile, the other half of the stink of the NFC East was taking on the Miami Dolphins, and I'm talking about the Washington Commanders, and it got ugly quick. This thing was 31-7 at halftime. I mean, these dudes have quit. They've quit on Ronald Rivera. He'll be fired at season's end. They've already fired their defensive coordinator, Jack Del Rio. Eric Bieniemy won't be here either. He's been he's getting worse as the season progresses, and that may be a byproduct of some injuries, but I think it's just the players are just fed up at this point. They don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, and it kind of feels like a substitute teacher at this point, where why am I going to respect you? You're not my real teacher. What are you going to do? Right? Like, what's Ronald going to do at this point? What, you going to bench me? What are you going to do? Reprimand me? You're not going to be here in a month from now, right? So I think you're getting a little bit of that from these players as they're frustrated. It's 4 years of the same thing. Nothing's changed. This team is ill-prepared. You guys have seen it. They didn't have much left after the loss to Seattle, and you're seeing it play itself out on a weekly basis. Thank God that they're on a bye week this week, and so we won't have to sit through another ass-kicking like the one we saw on Sunday, 45-15 at the hands of the Miami Dolphins. They'll be lucky to win another game this season. If they do, it'll be the Jets. I can't see them beating the Rams right now. They're definitely not beating the 49ers. Unless Dallas doesn't need Week 18, I can't see them winning that game either. But, hell, maybe Dallas's backups are better than our starters at this point. In any event, I saved half of the 40 burger that I had for the Eagles. I didn't know I would be sharing, but I saved half of the 40 burger. Look, man, what can I say? I'm a generous guy. We'll get to the Eagles here in a second. Let's go back to Thursday Night Football, though, and a thrilling 41-35 victory for the Dallas Cowboys over the Seattle Seahawks. What a game it was on Thursday night to kick off the week of action in Week 13. Dallas, offensively, they're really good right now. They're clicking on all cylinders. Dak Prescott has entered his name into the MVP conversation. He's playing extraordinary ball. This is the best, and I've said this, and I said this on the NFC East roundtable, the Super Friends stream, that this is the best football I've seen Dak Prescott play in his career. And I don't think it's relatively close. He's making all the throws. He missed a couple on Monday night, but I mean, he's not missing much. The game-winning score, that touchdown pass to the tight end Ferguson. Are you kidding me? That's a ridiculous throw. I mean, he's been locked in this season. He's using his legs when he has to. That's also a part of his game that I haven't seen, here, in recent years, especially after the ankle injury. But it's starting to become a part of his game again. He doesn't use it very often, but when he needs to, he can. I think they're starting to get a little bit of balance out of the run game with Rico Dowdle. I think he offers them that power in between the tackles that they missed from Zeke Elliott. Tony Pollard had a really good game on Monday night, got in the end zone, I think twice, if not twice, definitely once. But I think he got in there twice. You're starting to see Brandon Cooks emerge, right, and become that number 2 option that they yearned for, opposite of CeeDee Lamb. And then CeeDee Lamb was CeeDee Lamb on Thursday night. He was excellent, and the offense really carried the Cowboys in that game because the defense was shredded by Geno Smith and the Seattle Seahawks. DK Metcalf had a field day. Deron Bland was tortured and abused in the first half. Now, he did get a pick in the second half, but it could have been just as bad in the second half had Tyler Lockett not dropped the pass. That would have been Deron Bland getting torched yet again in the game. But nonetheless, when the defense needed a stop late, and as bad as they were in this game, when they needed a stop late, they got 2 of them in a row to help secure the victory, 41-35. I've heard Cowboys fans make excuses like, 3 games in 12 days, it finally caught up with the defense. Maybe that was the case. I don't know. But what I do know is every time the Cowboys see a competent offense, this is what happens. So I'm not really sure if I'm ready to crown their defense because I really think that's a good unit. But I also haven't seen them do it against a good team offensively yet. And that's why it's going to be interesting to see what happens these next, 3 to 4 weeks. Because over the next month, Dallas's defense is going to be tested like it hasn't been tested all season long. They've had stretches this year where they get 1 or 2 teams that are offensively solid, but not in a row like this. Not where they're going to be constantly tested. You get the Eagles on Sunday Night Football. You got the Bills, you got the Dolphins, you got the Lions. I don't know what the actual order of that is going to be, but in some way, shape, or form, you'll be playing those 4 teams in a row. All of them can score. All of them are prolific on the offensive side of the football. Now I want to see what your defense does because you saw San Francisco, you gave up a 40-burger. You saw Seattle, and they were struggling offensively. They hadn't scored points in the last month until they met you, and then they put up 35. So I want to see what happens when you see a competent offense because the Eagles scored on you, the 49ers scored on you, and the Seahawks scored on you. And when you've played the inferior teams, you've beat them up, made them look inferior like you're supposed to. Now the question begs, is that really your defense, or is the one we saw on Thursday night really your defense, or is it somewhere in between? Because I think this offense is ready to win and win now. I'm not sure if, and I thought it was the opposite. Well, this defense is ready. If the offense can just meet them halfway, they got something. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe this offense is ready and the defense isn't quite. We'll see. Maybe that was just a blip on the radar. Maybe it was 3 games in 12 days that really, had the legs of that Cowboys defense. Offense didn't seem too impacted by the 3 games in 12 days, but that's nor here nor there. They got it done. They're 9-3, and because of the happenings of Sunday, it sets up a massive NFC East showdown, the likes of which we haven't seen in the division probably since 2012's Week 17 Cowboys-Redskins matchup for the division. I don't think we've had another game that settled the division other than the 2020 game, which was trash between the Commanders, well, then the football team, and the Eagles, which that was trash, right? The last big game we've had in the regular season like this probably was 2012's season finale for all the marbles. So this is a massive NFC East game. Can't wait to watch. Speaking of the NFC East and why that game is so massive, the Philadelphia Eagles came into the game at 10-1 versus the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday in Week 13. The Niners came in at 8-3. And so the Eagles had a chance to really put a stranglehold on the number 1 seed in the NFC conference, right? And they also had a chance to be the first team to clinch a playoff berth in the NFL this year. A win coupled with a couple of other things, and they could have been the first team to clinch. Well, that didn't happen. And now all of a sudden, things have gotten really interesting with this loss 42-19 to the San Francisco 49ers. Now, just talking about the game, It was a weird game because the Eagles actually dominated this game early. They went down the field a couple times, couldn't find the end zone. That's what really kept San Francisco in the game. Had they scored touchdowns on those first two possessions while the 49ers were struggling, this could have been a totally different game. Hell, if even one of them was a touchdown, that's first possession in particular, had that resulted in a touchdown, this could have been a totally different game. But instead, they settled for two field goals, and it allowed the 49ers to hang in while they were struggling offensively. Their first two possessions, people forget, they started out the game 3-and-out on their first two possessions. They didn't get their first down of the game until the second quarter. Speaking of which, it kind of lends itself to what I've been talking about, which is this Eagles defense stinks. And I think Eagles fans are finally ready to admit it, and not just say, oh, you're hating. I think they're really ready to say, okay, you're right, the defense is trash. Because you gave up 42 points in 3 quarters. Like they didn't have a first down in the first quarter. You got 42 points in 3 quarters of ball. Really, 2.5 quarters, if we're being honest. Because I don't think they scored their first touchdown till like the 6:48 mark or 7-minute mark of the second quarter. And then they scored their last touchdown of the first half right before the halftime break. So you really gave up 42 points in 2.5 quarters. But who's keeping score, right? Who's keeping track of that anyway? At the end of the day, this game had a chance to be more competitive than what it was, but I've been harping on the fact that this defense isn't good, and you can't continue to fall behind against good opponents and think that Jalen Hurts is going to resurrect you from the dead. You can't keep doing that. And I said the reason that I thought this game would be different was because the 49ers are the best defensive team you've seen all season long. And they're not going to allow you to claw and scratch your way back into this game. If you fall behind, their offense is good enough to continue to apply pressure against your bad defense. And their defense is good enough to slow your offense down from putting up a bunch of points in the second half and making the game competitive or Eagles victory, as in past games against the Bills, the Cowboys, and the Commanders. So I just felt like this was the kind of game, and maybe it's the wake-up call. Every time the Eagles lose a game in the last 2 seasons, it's what they need to get them back on track to kind of refocus them, if you will. I don't think this was necessary refocusing. Like last year, you were so good, it was easy to get complacent, and you just needed a loss just to say, hey, we can lose if we're not careful. This year, you've been struggling to win, but you've been winning. And we're going to find out what you're made of, because that wasn't just a regular loss. That was a loss to your confidence, and that was also a blow to your ego, right? This Eagles team is full of swag. You got players crying on the sidelines. You got security guards being tossed from the game. You got Deebo Samuel waving to the fans. Like, they came to your building. They knocked your quarterback out of the game temporarily, similar to what you did to them last year. They beat up DeAndre Swift, was hitting him, lit him up in the first quarter, lit his ass up in the fourth quarter. He had to leave the game temporarily. Like, they just bullied you. And the Eagles aren't used to being bullied. They're used to being the ones doing the bullying. And now I want to see how they respond, because I'm going to say this. I don't think if you play the 49ers again, it's going to end up like this again, like a blowout. I don't think that just because they beat you up here doesn't mean you can't go back to San Francisco, to Santa Clara, or have them come back to the Link in the playoffs and get them back. But what it does say to me is you can't do what you did against other teams, i.e. Kansas City and Dallas and Buffalo in particular, and think you're going to do that to San Francisco. You're going to have to start fast. You're going to have to be consistent. There can't be this lull where you don't score. Your defense is going to have to show some sort of backbone, because Deebo Samuel absolutely gutted you. So did Brandon Ayuk. And Juwan Jennings just took one of your players and sunned him and got him out of their face. Like, get out of here, man. So I think it was Eli Ricks. Whatever the case may be, it was ugly. And now I want to see how you bounce back against Dallas on Sunday Night Football. Here's the thing. You're an underdog probably for the first time all year long. That's my guess. Maybe you were an underdog at Kansas City. Not sure. That's going to be a fascinating game because as good as Dallas has been playing, they're still beatable, and their defense showed that they're good. They're not great, right? So we're going to see. You guys have already played. It was a very competitive game. Everybody feels like Dallas outplayed you, but they didn't win the game, and that's what matters. So we'll see what happens. I'm just going to say this. The 1 seed in the NFC might be the worst place for anyone looking to make it to the Super Bowl to be. I'm just going to say that. I've explained myself multiple times. I'll do it as quickly as I can right now. The 1 seed is going to have to go through, more likely than not, the team that doesn't win the division in the NFC East and whoever the 2 seed is. So, for instance, if Philadelphia is the 1 seed, Dallas is going to be the 5 seed, and more likely than not, the 49ers will be the 2 seed. The problem with being the 1 seed is, yep, you got home field advantage. Yep, you don't have to play in wild card weekend. But when you come off that bye, the likelihood is you'll be playing Dallas. And if you so happen to get past Dallas, more likely than not, you'll then have to play San Francisco, right? Whereas if you're the 2 seed, and again, this is all hinging upon the 6 and 7 seed not upsetting anyone like it happened last year. Remember, you had the easy path to the Super Bowl last year because the Giants upset the Vikings, which then put the Giants in your crosshairs instead of you having to play Dallas in the second round and then having to play San Francisco, right? This same scenario happened last year, and you would have had to play both Dallas and San Francisco last year, except the Giants won and they spared you. If that happens again, then the 1 seed is where you want to be. But if it doesn't happen this year, and I don't see it happening this year because I don't see the back end of the NFC being as competitive as it was last year. But anyway, Detroit isn't, Detroit is vulnerable. So anything could happen. But if everything goes according to plan, the 2 seed wins, the 3 seed wins, and Dallas is going to beat whomever, or whomever doesn't win the NFC East is going to beat the 4 seed. Whoever comes out of the South is getting beat by either Philadelphia or Dallas. If that happens and everything stays true to form, the 1 will play the 5, the lowest remaining seed. That's going to be Dallas if you're Philadelphia and you're the 1 seed. And if you beat them and San Francisco beats Detroit, guess what? Then you have to play San Francisco. Instead of you being able to avoid that, if you're the 2 seed, somebody's going to do half of your dirty work for you, right? Because if everything plays out the way it's supposed to, if you're San Francisco, you're in the 2 seed in this scenario, you get Detroit. After you beat whomever is the 7 seed, let's say it's Green Bay. Okay, you beat up on Green Bay, and then you get Detroit next. You beat the Detroit Lions, and now you don't have to go through both Dallas and Philadelphia. You just got to beat whomever wins that game between Dallas and Philadelphia in the divisional round. So your path is a little bit easier. And I don't want to look at it and say, hey, Green Bay should be a pushover and Detroit should be a pushover. But trust me, I'd much rather play Detroit, Green Bay, or whomever versus having to play both Philadelphia and Dallas, or Philadelphia and San Francisco, or Dallas and San Francisco, if you get what I'm saying. 1 seed might not be all that much of a prize this year in the NFC, is all I'm saying. But who doesn't want to be the 1 seed, right? Who doesn't want the Super Bowl path in the conference to go through their home, right? I get all of that, but I'm not saying, I'm just saying. Anyway, it's a big game on Sunday night, the biggest we've seen in the NFC East. It was a big game last year between the Giants and Commanders, but it pales in comparison to this game right here. This is for potentially the division. Eagles win this game. They get the season sweep over Dallas. They go up 2 games, plus they own the tiebreaker. It's over, right? Especially with the schedule Dallas has and the schedule Philly has down the stretch with Giants, Cardinals, Giants. It's over. However, if Dallas wins this game, now the 2 teams are tied at 10-3. Dallas still has a murderer's row schedule. I assume Dallas is going to lose at least 1 game, possibly more, down the stretch. So I still think no matter what happens here, I still think Philadelphia is going to win the division. But it makes things a hell of a lot more interesting should the Eagles not get it done. If you want to put it to bed, take care of business on Sunday night if you're Philadelphia. If you want to make this shit interesting down the stretch and make things a lot more complicated than they need to be, go to Dallas, lose, and then it's a whole different conversation we're having. Anyway, we'll see what happens. It's going to be fun. Bart Scott. Can't wait. And the good thing is, my team doesn't play, so I don't have to sit through garbage. I just get to watch the carnage. In any event, I'm your man, Louie Tee, signing off on behalf of the NFC East Super Friends. See you guys next time. What a hell of a week it's going to be in the NFC East. See you next time.
Tenderize that Philly meat real good.
Tenderize that Philly meat real good.
Tenderize that Philly meat real good.